start with a story of my dad's best friend, Adi. When he lived in Germany, in a small town, the only Jewish family in Beersheba, and things started to get bad, they started to protest in front of his house as the only Jewish family. And they put loudspeakers in front of his house and would play recordings of Hitler's speeches. And his whole school would come attend, and they would march back and forth, girls and boys, and yell, "When Jew blood spurts from our knives." And he was allowed to watch it. His parents had him sit in the front of the house, and he was in shock because among the crowd was his best friend, Adi, who was his first and last best friend. Later in life, my dad would go back, because we have a cemetery there that dates for a long time, to clean it up. Adi was still alive, and he came up to him and he said, "You know what? We didn't mean it that way. We didn't mean it that way." I'm here to tell you guys, you are Adi. One day you will realize that. Is that story offensive to you? Is it anti-German? Is learning about the Holocaust anti-German? Are you more shocked and outraged by me talking about the Holocaust than you are outraged by the actions that were taken? Is learning about Jewish persecution in the Middle East Islamophobic? Are you more outraged by me speaking about those things than those things actually happening? Not one item that I mentioned in my report has been denied by those people. Nothing. Not one fact. In fact, they re-quoted things I put in my presentation that I didn't make up. The Council of Ulemas, a 1,000-year university in Cairo, a very influential Islamic group, said that, not me. So why are you blaming the messenger for something that was said? The reason I brought up the 1929 terrorist attacks and 1936 terror attacks and 1937 terror attacks and 1938 terrorist attacks is to show that those attacks are not because Israel existed. Israel did not exist at that time. So to blame Israel, that was my point. I'm not trying to hurt anybody. In fact, I wrote an op-ed. I didn't put anybody's name in it. And that's very different than what these people have done to me. I've been verbally attacked and harassed for teaching history. There was an article written about me, 10-page diatribe. Not one single fact that I put in my report was disputed, not one fact. Instead, they chose to attack me personally and try to incite hatred against me, naming my name 7 times, naming the people who are supporting me in the report, hoping that someone is going to do something. I'm not trying to harm anybody. They are. And you know what? I read the whole article, 10 pages of it, from people associated with this group. And it reminded me of something. And then I got it. It reminded me of Hitler's Mein Kampf. Every sentence they put in there about me was written by Hitler about the Jews. You can read it yourself. Hitler blamed Jews for financial crimes. They're blaming me for manipulating the city. They call me vile. Hitler called the Jews vile. They're taking the playbook from the Nazis and applying it again. I'm not to blame for history. I'm just teaching it. There is no difference between the methods used today and what were used in Germany. And in fact, even worse so, they've weaponized the Holocaust against me. I lost 10 close members. Of course, I wasn't alive at the time. 10 close members in the Holocaust. And they insidiously used the Holocaust to attack me. What am I supposed to do? Stand here and take that? That's what they want. They don't want the Jews to be able to defend themselves. Now I'm going to talk about, since they brought up the Holocaust, how did the Holocaust happen? Historians talk about it. People don't really understand.
The projector went off. They're working on it.
Okay, it doesn't matter. Historians have coined a term, redemptive anti-Semitism. Redemptive anti-Semitism. What is redemptive anti-Semitism? Anti-Semitism has been around in Europe for a long time, but it was Hitler that was able to weaponize it that resulted in the extermination of Jews. And what did he do that was so innovative? He linked it to an idealistic goal. The combination of anti-Semitism with an idealistic goal was like smoke and mirrors, because you had everybody focusing on the idealistic goal, and anything in your way is justified. Sounds familiar? Whether they were conscious of it or not, the German and Austrian killers had been indoctrinated by the regime's relentless anti-Jewish propaganda, which penetrated every crevice of society and whose slogans they at least partially internalized. Slogans they at least partially internalized. Slogans they at least partially internalized. Does that sound familiar? In general, the major anti-Jewish measures the Nazis would take from then on in the various domains were not only acts of terror, but also symbolic statements. Symbolic statements. Symbolic statements. Sound familiar? The dual function expressed the pervasive presence of ideology within the system. Its tenets had to be ritually reasserted. Its tenets had to be ritually reasserted. Its tenets had to be ritually reasserted. Let me give you an example of a timeline of 1933. Hitler took power in January. First thing they started to do was the members of the Academy of Arts and Sciences had to sign a declaration of loyalty. Sound familiar? Then they started to boycott concerts that had Jewish artists, Jewish musicians. Some Jewish musicians were asked to resign so the concerts could proceed. Boycotts. Sound familiar? Directors of arts and sciences had to resign from their board membership. Small stuff, relatively, because the justification was excessive Jewish influence. Then there were some acts of violence, but this is where it gets really clever. US newspapers and US Jews started to condemn the persecution. Hitler seized his opportunity. He didn't mention anything about what he was doing that was wrong. He mentioned that the articles they were writing were wrong. The reporting of what he was doing was wrong. The history that people were teaching were wrong, not the actual acts. And so he came up with an idea. We're going to boycott the Jews on April 1st, 1933, countrywide boycott. And he justified it by saying the US is trying to exert their dominance on us. He even negotiated with the US and said, if you renounce your criticism of Germany, we will not have a boycott. On March 30th, the UK and the US said, yes, we will renounce. Guess what happened? Just like what happened yesterday. Germans said, forget it, we're going to have a boycott anyway. And they went forward with the boycott on April 1st, all Jewish businesses. And they learned a lot that day. You know what? No one complained about it. Some cities had boycotts, some didn't. No non-Jew complained about it. Actually, the only complaints they got were non-Jews that wrote letters to Hitler saying, we're afraid that if you keep this up, we're going to lose our jobs if we work for a Jewish business. That's what they were afraid of. Hitler learned, no resistance. Why? The big goal, Aryan blood. 7 days later, he passed the law of the restoration of the professional civil service. Sounds grandiose. It just meant every Jew had to resign from the civil service. Grandiose words. They try to manipulate them. Redemptive anti-Semitism. Let me give you another word for redemptive anti-Semitism. Anti-Zionism. It's taking the anti-Semitism and it's adding a big goal to it. The biggest goal, world peace. In their minds, world peace will be achieved. All the evils, racism, bigotry, are all tied into this enormous goal. Anything can be justified. That's literally what led to the extermination of the Jews. I have 10 family members that died in the Holocaust. My great-grandmother was in Auschwitz. She was gassed on March 16th, 1944, cremated 4 days later. Her daughter was sent to Latvia, Riga, was shot in a forest. My grandmother's brother and his wife and his 5 kids, aged 9 to 18, were sent in a cattle car. I have the number of the cattle car that was sent to Belarus. They were lined up in front of a pit and shot. Then what the Germans did is they took the Lithuanians that shot the Jews, put them in a truck and gassed them. A year and a half later, to try to hide the evidence, they took the bones and lit up a fire, okay? They have not, I'm trying to teach history because they refuse to believe any of it. They think that the Jews have started this thing. The Jews wanted peace from the beginning. They came to this country because that's the only place they had to go. Thank you for your time, for giving me time. Thank you.